Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Back to the program. We have State Representative Mark Lowery is with us. He represents the good people of District 39. Mark, welcome back to the program.
Paul, how are you doing?
Doing well, sir. Go ahead and tell our audience real quick, District 39, about where that is.
District 39 primarily is made up of the Maumelle area, but it also takes in some of rural northwest Pulaski County, Marche, Oak Grove, and then also the Amboy community in North Little Rock. That's just right outside Camp Robinson.
Okay. So I wanted to have you on to talk about this headline that I saw last week. It was August 24th. Headline was Hiring Arkansas Lawmaker's Wife for State Job Clears Panel. And in it, and this is interesting because we were just talking about how a lot of times former legislators end up with government jobs or things like that. But we really didn't cover the spouse aspect of this. But State Representative Democrat Reginald Murdoch, his wife, Willie Murdoch, has basically been given an $85,000 job. And you're on the Arkansas Legislative Council, correct?
I'm an alternate, but last term I served as vice chair of Legislative Council.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I'm concerned about it. You know, I was listening to the end of your last segment with Representative Sullivan, where you were talking about the Republican brand, and I just have to say I think the Republican brand is damaged in Arkansas by the fact that we're not doing any better than previous administrations in terms of curbing what many Arkansans would look at and see as cronyism. And I think that, this is one of those cases where we needed to have more scrutiny over the hiring of Ms. Murdoch, and we did not. And I made a motion last week to re-refer the hiring back to the Personnel Subcommittee. I had been told and confirmed that there were some issues regarding her past employment as a school superintendent that were not known when she was vetted by Higher Ed and also by the Personnel Subcommittee. And I thought it bore taking another look at.
Yeah.
But I was outvoted 30-9 on that motion.
30-9. So Willie Murdoch hired as the director of the Career Pathways program. You say she's a former superintendent. Now, is that because you Google her name really quick, and you find Arkansas Times stories from June 8, 2016. Audit finds $23,000 overpayment on insurance for Lee County. It mentions Willie Murdoch there. Then we have Lee County School District talks about state control nearly 1 year. What does state control mean in this context?
Well, that school district was under state control for being in academic distress and, I believe, fiscal distress. And she was the superintendent answering to Johnny Key as her school board member, or as the school board. And they were released from state takeover, and I don't know the exact time frame. Seems like it was 2016. But then almost immediately, earlier in the spring, and maybe one of the headlines that you might have come across, the school district under her control, under her supervision, was in danger of losing accreditation because of hiring decisions that she made. And the school board decided at that time that they wanted her to resign. They wanted to terminate her contract. That was around February of this year. Some other school board members that disagreed with that action filed a legal injunction to allow her to finish out her contract, which ended in June, and then the school board did not renew her contract. Now, those are, if we're going to give someone credit in looking at their application, and one thing we should point out, there were 105 applicants for this position.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if all of them were Arkansans, but assuming they are, there are 104 Arkansas residents who probably were not treated fairly in the vetting and hiring process. But her contract ended in June, if you're going to look at someone's years of experience, and I think in her case it's maybe 30 years in the school business, you've got to look at the good and the bad. And what I've heard is that the bad was not reviewed before the decision was made to give her the job.
And that's why I'm glad you're coming on. I want to get this out there because we briefly covered this on Friday. We're talking with State Representative Mark Lowery. Now, Mark, I know because I've talked to you several times, just in passing, down at what I call the Marble Palace, and I know, education is something that's very important to you. Matter of fact, you're on the education committee, correct? Or are you the chair of the education committee?
No, I'm not. I'm not chair, but
okay.
I am on that committee for my third term.
Okay, yeah. So this is you know a lot of what goes on behind the scenes and stuff like that. And I have the story pulled up here. This is just from Lee County, Arkansas. An Arkansas school district has been placed on probation after it failed to meet staffing and course requirements. Times-Herald reported the Arkansas Board of Education voted to put the Lee County School District on probation Thursday after it failed to hire enough counselors for the student body. In addition, the district has reportedly failed to provide the 38 required courses. This is a story from April, from News Channel 3, April of this year, and you're telling me that we essentially have given the superintendent a promotion.
Well, she is making, from my understanding, she is making less than what she did at Lee County, but there's not a sterling record that is following her. And the audit and also this issue of probation was something that the selection committee at higher ed did not review. They did not look at this. The other thing that very much concerns me is the semantical wordplay that is being used between the governor's office and higher ed. Governor's office says, well, we didn't recommend her. We asked that she be considered. But as you can imagine, higher ed heard that, and their perception was that she was being recommended for that job. And I just think we shouldn't be getting caught up in the semantical games that make it look like we're not doing our due diligence in making sure that we do the right thing. And that's really what this is about, is doing the right thing.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. I mean, I really am. That is refreshing. So do we know why they don't look at the negatives? Is that standard procedure when we're talking about hiring somebody? They just don't ever look at the negatives that that kind of should follow them into the interview process?
Well, one of the ththings that I was, and you have to understand, I'm probably going to upset a lot of my colleagues who think, well, you got outvoted 30-9, you need to let this go. But this was brought to my attention, several weeks ago by a fellow member of legislative audit or someone who served on audit. We sit on legislative audit, we get these audit reports, and one of the things that is very frustrating is we keep seeing school districts getting bad audits. The superintendent maybe their contract doesn't get renewed because of it, and they're able to go right down the road to another school district, and there's not anything flagged on their credentials or on their resume or anything. And they're able to just take right up business as usual. And that's the case here. I mean, there are, allegations back and forth. Well, was it the school board's fault that she got overpaid, or was it the superintendent? Was it her fault? Whatever. The truth is they wanted to resolve it. The school board wanted to what happened is that she was overpaid in health insurance premiums.
Yeah.
We have state law that says that all school district employees have to be paid the same amount in health insurance contributions. The school board had structured her contract in such a way that she was wanting to forego a travel allowance and a housing allowance because she lived like 2 minutes from the school offices. And in lieu of that, they went ahead and gave her more in health insurance premiums. And that's a violation of state law. Once it was found by the audit, it needed to be corrected.
Yeah.
My understanding, one of the ways that it was corrected is that from that point forward, she paid all of her health insurance premiums. So, there's fault to be laid on both sides. But my frustration is that the personnel subcommittee, some of the members say to me, well, it's not our job to vet these individuals. Our job is just to review. And frankly, if it wasn't...
Now, come on. This makes me... I mean, I'm reading this here, and I'm hearing what you're saying about our job's not to vet. That's preposterous to me. It's just to review. So why even do it? I mean, it sounds to me like it's just a rubber stamp. I mean, you're reading here, this is from Max Brantley, of all people, but Max Brantley, Arkansas Times, the excess payment she got, $23,331, almost $800 a month for health insurance, just like you said, Mark, were for Superintendent Willie Murdoch, and now we've hired this person, for this position. This all just, I mean, I don't understand why we give these public officials or these taxpayer-funded employees such a benefit of the doubt. It's so frustrating as a citizen and a taxpayer.
Well, and the point was made to me that, we would not, the personnel subcommittee of ALC, the Legislative Council, would not have even been reviewing this specific personnel appointment if it had not been the spouse of a legislator.
Oh, wow.
Well, there's a reason we have that state law there for the review, and it's not meant to be a rubber stamp. It's meant to be a review and to make sure that all of the T's were crossed and all the I's were dotted, and they were not.
Mm-hmm. And, this really does kind of connect with a story we covered. This is unrelated to the current topic, but it sort of is, because Governor Hutchinson wanted the DHS contract to be, and I believe it was something like $42 million more than the current bidder for whatever the service was. And the governor's going ahead and doing it anyway because he has the legal authority to do that. And I'm just thinking, well, why this whole idea of oversight and getting the rubber stamp? I mean, if you can't actually stop it from happening, then what are we doing? I mean, so I guess the question would be, could you guys have actually stopped this from happening if the votes had turned out in your favor?
We could have sent it back to the personnel subcommittee. Several members of that committee, maybe most of them, were not aware of the bad audit. They were not aware of the probation of her previous employer, the school district, when they went ahead and decided to approve, as reviewed, her hiring. Now, and here's the other issue, is that she was paid on this state job, I believe, $8,000 above the recommended base. So not only did we give her a state job, we went ahead and paid her as exceptionally well qualified. And I don't think that her previous employment shows that she's exceptionally well qualified.
We're talking with State Representative Mark Lowery from State Representative out of District 39. Now, you mentioned, you kind of built on what you heard State Representative Sullivan, who was on the program earlier, when I did ask him about the brand of the Republican Party. And I'm glad that you think that this is negative towards it, because I do as well. I think there's a lot of stuff that is. What's the solution here? And because I think there's a disconnect between what the people of Arkansas have been voting for now for several election cycles. It's not just, in my opinion, it's not just switching from a Democrat to a Republican. I believe people are voting for reform. And I don't think some people in the leadership understand the level of reform that the people of Arkansas want. What are your thoughts on the brand and reform?
Well, I think you're exactly right. I think that the people of Arkansas made a conscious decision when they voted in supermajorities of Republicans in both the House and the Senate, and a Republican governor, that we were going to do different, that we were no longer going to be pushing through sole source contracts without bidding, that we were no longer going to be ignoring best practices when it comes to procurement and deciding contracts, and that we're no longer going to participate in what many people believe is cronyism, where, and let me just say this. I know that there are some exceptional spouses of legislators. It should not preclude them from being considered for these jobs. However, because it doesn't doesn't pass the smell test for a lot of our Kansans, we need to make sure that complete scrutiny and confidence in the process is upheld. And I just don't think it was in this particular case. So I'm very disappointed that we don't seem to be doing anything different in terms of reform and of making sure that we have good government.
Yeah, well, I certainly I would agree with that statement. I think we got to do more. And real quick, last question, unrelated, but do you want to comment on the news about Senator Jake Files and the FBI on the affidavit and him still remaining in office? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I'm very concerned about so much of the fallout that's been out there. You know, one of the things, when I first got elected, I was not that crazy about the idea of GIF grants. It smelled to me like, pork barrel politics. But I have to say, I've been able to help some very small, needy organizations, food pantries and neighborhood associations with that money. And of course, now GIF has been stopped because there have been these incidences of abuse. And I think, it does damage the credibility of the Republican Party that we have these kind of incidents happening by Republican legislators. And I think it's disconcerting that Senator Files is, still holding his chairmanship of the Revenue and Tax Committee and sounding in about tax reform, and yet, we've got these questions that seem to not look good. And so I wish that he would voluntarily step down. I don't favor any kind of forcing him out, because certainly everyone is innocent or they're guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. He has that right of due
Freudian
process.
slip there. Okay, good. Yeah,
Right. Well, there's so many of us that are guilty before we're proven innocent on the accusations of whatever. But this is the case where he does get due process rights. But I think it does hamper his ability to represent his constituents.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your candor, appreciate your honesty, State Representative Mark Lowery, and just let me know, and you want to come on and talk about this again. I really would like to follow this, and if we have some ideas moving forward about what we can do to actually put some teeth into the power that you guys have as a legislature to try to stop some of this stuff. But it's going to require people going out there and kind of being willing to take the hits, because you're changing the way things go in Little Rock, and the bureaucracies don't really want to change, and that's going to take you guys really being willing to take the heat. And I'll let you have the last word.
Well, you're absolutely right. It takes more than just a term or two to turn things around. That's I used to be a big advocate of term limits, and I have to say, if it weren't for term limits, I would not have been able to have been in the legislature. But it takes us a while to be able to overcome the power of the bureaucracy that is in the executive branch and included in these agencies. And I think we're seeing some really good changes at the top, but there still are mid-level management decisions are being made over and above the wishes of the duly elected legislators.
State Representative Mark Lowery, we appreciate it, sir. Be safe, okay?
All right, thank you.
All righty. Folks, we got to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. The Liberty Machine rolls on next.